So the main topic today is, can love equal money? I personally believe so, but this is a kind of commercial view about how compassionate and accessible UX can be leveraged within a world of robots. When AI becomes everything that anyone can talk about, how exactly can we still remain in touch with our users, still remain in touch with our clients, and really drive forth compassionate and accessible UX as a lever for commercial output? So just moving on. So this is just a bit of an introduction to myself. I began my career as a digital officer at Historic Environment Scotland. I was designing data architectures, so Google Tag Manager, Google Analytics, as well as some Power BI and other platforms like that. And also was given the task of building the accessibility strategy for that organization. As a public sector body, they had to adhere to public sector body's 2018 accessibility legislation, which was something that was really important. So they gave me both of those tasks. I was primarily focused on the data analytics as well as the accessibility. Now, when you combine those things, data analytics as well as accessibility, with a bit of a creative desire, that's when I discovered UX UI, because those are really the foundations of great user experience, making sure that we are building things through data-driven decisions, building things that are accessible for all people, and then things with a bit of a creative flair and a real intention behind them. So I spent the following years working across a range of business types and sizes. I've worked for large enterprises, financial-based enterprises that were 3,000 plus employees, as well as tiny little startups, including an XR startup. So that's mixed reality and virtual reality, which was really interesting, designing for 3D space. And how do we consider accessibility, for example, someone's presence in a room when they're trying to interact with UI that is actually at arm's length. So, really a bit of a diverse range of experience across different businesses, different sizes, different sectors. And also worked a little bit as an accessibility auditor as well, which kind of leveraging that accessibility experience. So I joined the CTI team about 11 months ago to help grow the design team, help support the business as the new lead designer, bring some of that kind of expertise in to assist different teams. At CTI, we have, for example, a new innovation team, which the design team and innovation team work very closely together to kind of provide each other insight or offer alternative perspectives. So it's a really great relationship that we're building internally. Agency life is fast-paced. It's new to me, but CTI provides us with amazing opportunities to find the absolute best solutions for our clients. Now, a little bit about CTI as an organization. We have 150 plus digital experts. We've been working for 23 years in the industry. We also have won a number of different awards across the slew of services that we provide. We are a full service agency, meaning we provide everything from UX design to development of different technology bases, out to social media, out to marketing, to all sorts of kind of maintained services and continual enhancement services as well. And 50% of our clients have been with us for over 3 years, which is excellent. We really, value those ongoing relationships. So just a little bit of a look at the different clients that we work with. I've personally worked with most of the clients on this particular sheet, from small local authorities to really, really large global organizations with web estates of 100 plus sites. We work across both public and private sectors, and our diverse experience allows us to really think creatively about every project that we approach. So just on the agenda today, I know that was a bit of kind of introduction to myself, introduction to CTI, but on the agenda today, we're going to get into the meat and potatoes here. So how AI is enhancing user experience design. We see it throughout every single level and phase within the UX process now, or can be integrated. And I'm going to talk about some of those integrations, but also what we need to be wary of, what we need to think about, things like false confidence, making sure that we stay connected with our user, and how do we drive compassion and inclusive design to create more value. So we'll talk about, as I mentioned, false confidence. Commercial design is compassionate and inclusive design. The future of compassionate, accessible UX in a world of robots. So what is it going to look like going forward? And also, how do we need to maintain some vigilance throughout and any risk of false confidence? And lastly, we'll talk through a bit of a thought experiment and a demonstration of how we at CTI integrate this value both through compassionate and accessible design as well as AI design. So section one, we're talking about how is AI enhancing our user experiences. So there are obviously so many ways that AI can benefit design teams today. I've listed a few here on this slide. I'm not going to talk through every single one of them, or we would be here all day. But whether we're creating designs, performing research, or crafting new client deliverables, we can and really should integrate AI where appropriate is very important, into our processes so that our business and our clients benefit from increased productivity, reduced cost, and also the user benefits that are associated to this as well. Now, I'm just going to talk a little bit through how we can kind of separate. Can we have a racy matrix with robots? Oh, goodness. Sorry, something just fell over in the room, but we're okay. So can you have a racy matrix with a robot? Well, I would argue kind of. So we have the human side of UX design. We want to think about strategic compassion. How do we think about the user and place the user first? Keep maintaining that lens through all of the different assets and production that we provide to our clients. Complex problem solving, we still need people. We need people to think through complex challenges and come up with creative, complex solutions. Ethical and brand oversight. So this one's very important. We need to make sure that we are designing ethically, that we are not falling into traps or design dark patterns that can very easily be provided perhaps by an AI where it might provide a recommendation, but realistically, we need to make sure that we're maintaining that ethical approach. Also, brand oversight, ensuring that our AI tooling does not cut corners on brand. We make sure that we're maintaining the brand fidelity for all of our clients. High stakes decision making, real user validation, and manual accessibility auditing. On the AI side, we have things like rapid prototyping, being able to generate a design and get it in front of the client as soon as possible. That's incredibly valuable because it allows them to feedback on that user journey, and we can even push that user journey, that prototype, out into some user testing. Content generation, obviously, we in the design team often produce what we call dummy content. It just allows us to get those designs in front of the client, obviously with the understanding that the client has the perfect content for that design. Research synthesis, asset production, design systems governance, and automated accessibility auditing. All of these things are really can be leveraged through AI, but we can really join those things together through validated velocity. So we're pushing through those tasks and services that we find to be really valuable, but we can do those at a faster pace and lower cost now. Informed iteration, scalable accessibility, and risk mitigation growth. All of these things joint working from an AI and human perspective. So where does UX differ from other disciplines like software engineering? Where does the robot end and the human begin? This is where we're going to talk about false confidence and the cost of user experience design at scale. Now, I have a question to ask. We all value failing fast, right? Software culture originally is crafted around this ideology. So I'd like us to have a little bit of a think. If you just take a peek, we're going to provide a poll here, and you guys can quickly just vote for us, and this will give me a good understanding of where we stand as a group here. So clearly, failing fast is very important, but we're going to talk about the how that actually stands up within practice. So I'll just close that poll. Moving on. So this is kind of, at least from my perspective as a designer, when I was a younger designer in my own lived experience, I often thought that this was what a business meant when they asked me to just get it to the MVP stage. Let's just fail fast. Let's get it out there, right? We maybe had a couple of requirements, but we wanted to push it to production as quickly as possible so we could get it in front of the client and get it in front of users, get some feedback, right? Now, I want you to pay particularly close attention to the cost axis and what we're kind of skipping here when we think about this perception of failing fast. So I doubt I'm the only one with the perception, with this as a perception, but I'll ask, the next question we need to ask is, what is the cost of getting it wrong? So if our assumptions are incorrect at the start of the process, what is the potential cost of getting that wrong when we fail fast? And we're just going to look at what the traditional fail fast cycle looks like from more of a reality. So obviously, as As I grew in designer maturity and as I began to understand the process more, I realized that failing fast didn't mean just finish it now, right? There is a process. There's intention to the work and there's intention to the process. We need to work through the different stages of failing fast as quickly as possible, but still with intention and still with a vision going forward. But I still ended up with one remaining question, which was what happens when we introduce AI? Well, something like this. So, when you can deliver 10 times faster with AI, what's the cost of scaling that wrong solution? So, this is a quote by Tom DeMarco, who is an influential American software design engineer, author, and management consultant. So, he's best known for pioneering structured analysis in software engineering and for co authoring a workplace management book, Peopleware. So, the focus on how people engage within business and within technology and how we actually produce solutions. So he says quality takes time and reduces quantity. When we value quality, we sometimes have to reduce the quantity of what we produce. So that makes us, in a sense, less efficient. But efficiency optimized organizations have to recognize that quality has now become an enemy. So if we're focused so much on optimizing for efficiency and just getting things out as fast as possible, well, actually, we're dropping off quality. So AI can absolutely help us deliver at great cost and at great speed and at great scale, but only if we scale the correct solution from the start. And how do we uncover that correct solution from the start? Well, we do that through compassionate UX and accessible UI. So we're going to now talk about commercial design being compassionate and inclusive. We can still have great, productive, lucrative design processes while maintaining compassion for the user and inclusion for all. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the difference or the change in the UX philosophy over time in regards to compassion. What are we actually talking about when we talk about compassion? It sounds a bit loosey-goosey, maybe a little bit soft, but I remember going to an accessibility conference when I was still a bit of a new designer, and one of the speakers gave an impactful presentation on the evolution of empathy into compassion within design. I think it's essential for us to focus on our design teams and our businesses as they maintain this. So we begin with sympathy. So that's the desire to understand the user's pain points. We talk about pain points in the design process all the time. Oh, I think the user might have a pain point here or a pain point there. That's having sympathy, but we need to take it a step further. When we still didn't understand why our users were facing those friction points, we started asking ourselves, well, can we put ourselves in the shoes of our user? But then that got designers thinking, can we truly put ourselves in the shoes of our users? I would argue that we can't, because we can't fully understand we can't fully understand, at least for myself, as a normatively abled man, I can't truly understand the challenges faced by, for example, a busy parent who's also living with a disability. It wouldn't be appropriate for myself to put, or for me to put myself in that person's shoes truly. So the answer is no. However, what is left? Well, we can have compassion for the challenge. So compassion is core to the experience design because it is the catalyst to an operational response. In other words, I can't fully understand what you're going through, but I can absolutely try to help. And it's important maintaining that ideology as we work through the design process. I can't fully understand the user unless I speak with them and I take action. So let's think a little bit about the ideal user journey. So in a perfect world, the ideal user journey looks something like this. We move from entry into a specific platform or service. The user gathers the information that they need. They identify what they're looking for. They're able to make a decision, and they're able to complete with that decision. Now, the ideal user journey would be a completely flat line, and it'd be very, very high up on the ease axis. So how easy was it for them to do that thing? Well, it's a straight, lovely, flat line right at the top of ease. Wow, that was super easy and clear, says the user. But when we introduce the reality of what a user journey actually looks like, it's something more like this. So the user we can understand that this is a bit of the user journey just by some of the data that we look at. So we think that the users found the website because we're able to see page views for that website. We think that the users have found the info they want because perhaps they've spent a lot of time on that page or their page dwell time is high. On the scroll depth, so we believe that the user has read through the page, read through the content that they're looking for because of the scroll depth. So we're able to see how deeply a user is able to scroll on the page. However, we're just not sure why they haven't made the decision to execute or to convert. Why hasn't the user made that decision? Either we've recorded a drop off, which is the red line, or we've recorded a purchase event, which is the green line, and we can see the commercial output of that. Now, what happens if we introduce a sympathetic eye to this experience? So when we're working as UX designers, we often approach it like this. So it appears here that there is a friction point. This is why we map out user journeys, is because we're able to then identify user sentiment throughout the journey. The user's feeling positive, the user's feeling negative, and we ask the question, what is this point of friction? And then we introduce the empathetic eye. So maybe they're a single parent juggling a child while trying to make this purchase. How can we make that simpler? Amazon, for example, introduced the one-click pay journey, which is a good example of how to do that. So I found my product and I just click one single button and it transacts and the user has paid. But that's not, we need to take it one step further. We need to think about it with compassion. We can't answer that question without some clear data. So this is where we engage in some more user UX research or user research, whether that's moderated or unmoderated research. We need to engage with the user to identify the true problem that they are experiencing. If we make an assumption at this stage, we risk investing in a false fix. So if we scale this across a decent sized journey and we start making assumptions at different phases of that journey, and we start introducing fixes at different phases of that journey, we're scaling the wrong solution. And we actually end up spending a lot more when it was truly a bit of a simple fix. And we just needed to ask the user. At the end of the day, in this scenario, they simply couldn't find the call to action. So let's add a button, right? And that was as simple as it was. So sympathy and empathy help us identify the challenge, but compassionate UX presents the operational solution to identifying the challenge. So what happens when we introduce accessibility into this process? Now, I know accessibility is a bit of an interesting topic for a lot of different people. Maybe some think of it more as like a legislative exercise that we need to approach, and some think of it truly as a bit of a moral obligation. Well, accessibility is it offers so much value within a design process that it's really something that should just be standard within all design process going forward. And that's how we think of it at CTI. So accessibility is both a noun and a verb. It requires both a moral intention to improve the experiences of our users, but also the craft action to employ it successfully. So really what accessibility is it's provided by the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines drafted by the World Wide Web Consortium. I know that's a lot of acronyms and a lot of WCAG drafted by W3C, but the standards are really internationally the same. Every single piece of legislation generally uses WCAG as the baseline for accessible content. So ultimately, accessibility is a set of tangible guidelines for designing and coding web pages and components so that they are consistent and expected. Users have been using digital services for decades. So over that time, naturally, a common design language has emerged, and we do see that. One of the core tenets within the UX discipline is if it's not broken, let's not over-engineer it, right? So if it makes sense, you need to have if it's already an established pattern, you need to have a good reason to go against that pattern. And that is essentially what accessibility requires of us. Accessibility essentially ensures that we as businesses adhere to this universal design language. Not only does it improve the experiences of people with disabilities, but it also improves the experiences of everyone else. And we've got another little poll here for you guys to just think about. So we've got two options, and I'd like you to choose which one you would prefer to use in your daily life. I'll just give the team a second to throw the poll up, and we'll have a look. So I'm seeing a number of people selecting automated, pretty much everybody. So that's a good number. Oh, we've got one selecting manual doors. There we go. That's great. So I'll probably stop the poll there. I think that gives us plenty of information. So we've seen that basically 10 out of 11 individuals would prefer to use an automated door, which I think really speaks to the wider pattern that if we produce something that is just a benefit to all, this is how we end up with great accessible patterns that can help individuals engage with our services in really effective and profitable ways. So if we think about this if we take it back to our ideal journey and we think about this ideal journey again, this is what we were looking at before, right? We've enhanced our CTA, so we've got an increased, call to action now. Hopefully, we're getting more conversions. But what happens when we also produce accessible software? Well, it actually lowers the bar to entry for our users. So it becomes easier for us to deliver the ideal journey by producing accessible and consistent designs and components. So what does the future look like of compassionate and accessible UX in a world of robots? So within the UX design team, we're able to spend less time on things like menial tasks, things like documentation or crunching numbers, and we're actually able to spend more time with the user, more time with the client, understanding the client need, understanding the user need, so that we can deliver better, more flexible outputs. And ideally as well, we're able to deliver greater service diversity. So our team is able to expand out our services. We're no longer kind of pigeonholed to very specific things that we have to deliver. We're able to think up new services or come up with new and unique and bespoke ways of serving our clients' needs and serving our users' needs. And we're just going to take a little look at an example here at CTI of what we're actually doing and building now. So we have an internal proprietary LLM that we've built most recently. Some of you may have seen this on LinkedIn, but this LLM functionality helps us with triaging different opportunities that might come into the business, helps us with sales or tender support. If, for example, clients need services, we're able to run those tender proposals through our LLM and pull out the really salient and important information that we need. All of which means our designers are less likely to get pulled away from face-to-face client work and face-to-face user work. Our LLM suggestions are, of course, subject to review and validation by the UX team. So every single thing that our AIs produce, we, of course, always maintain a quality assurance, and we always make sure that that meets specific standards that we have internally. So basically, the idea here is, I'm going to turn the volume off. So the idea here is that we built an LLM that is both a UX sales and research assistant. Now, I've preloaded an example in here. So essentially, this is a bit of a UX health check, which I'll walk through in just a minute. But within the LLM, we have a number of different features and capabilities as well. So you'll notice here, I'm just going down to, so preloaded, and then so down here we have tools and skills. So our skills we've actually built into the LLM. So those are trained skills that the LLM can leverage based on training files that I've built. All of those training files are drafted and created and vetted by the UX team. And then it also has other capabilities like being able to upload files and things like that. Like I said, all of that data being maintained internally on internal cloud and services within CTI. Now, this is an example of an actual training file. So this is our tender analysis markdown file. So markdown files are a great way for AI to be able to read data really quickly. And that information is then fed back to the AI, and it's able to use it as a resource when generating an output. Now, you'll see here within this, basically, we've put in a run client-facing UX health check for CTI Digital. So we focused on CTI Digital as an example in this case. The audience or prospective, the audience is a prospective or existing client. So we're assuming that CTI might be a client of ours. The output type is a lead generation report. So we want to help the prospective client understand maybe some of the UX challenges that are existing on their site when we run this health check. And then the client value priority. So if we've spoken with the client and they've given us an indication of what their KPIs are for the next year, we're able to put that into the system and it will actually prioritize and focus on that analysis. Now, the UX health check is actually built off of an industry standard data set called the Nielsen-Norman heuristic criteria. Those are a very typical set of heuristic criteria within the industry. Now, a heuristic criteria is essentially a usability criteria. How usable is this software? How usable is this website? And all of those 10 different criteria are broken down as a training file. So what this AI will do is it will take the URL and it will go and it will basically analyze that web page that we provided it, and it will run that web page against those 10 criteria, and it will generate us a report. And we can see that report towards the end here. Now, I'm just going to scroll down here. So we've got a nice executive summary. So this breaks down the kind of UX health check. It says that CTI is focused on growing revenue while the site presents professional and capable brand imaging. There's some opportunities to obviously increase performance of the site. Now, the first one it suggests is strengthening decision-making confidence. So essentially, it's recommending that the website showcases expertise. However, revenue is often built on trust. So we need to improve things like our case studies, make those more visible. So we're actually able to see that the agent has pulled out a really great proof point. And this is something that we know of internally already, just based on our team performing that research. So it's really, really useful to see that the AI is actually hitting on the same points that our team observed as well. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide. AI echo chambers are perfect for increasing false confidence in solutions. So AI obviously can help our teams move faster, right? Generate personas, user journeys, research summaries, UI options, and even some accessibility checks. However, they can create a dangerous sense of confidence in that being the right solution. And the reason it does that is it actually plays on human psychology. So the risk is not that the AI is obviously wrong. It is that it can make untested ideas feel polished, credible, and ready for decision making. So we need to be really aware of the fact that our AI is going to tell us things, not ours specifically, but AI in general is going to tell us things that it thinks are absolutely right. It could even hallucinate some things, but we need to be really aware of the fact that we should not make assumptions about the user. We should try to have compassion and create accessible experiences so that we are actually answering the questions for the user that are important, and we're scaling the right solution and not introducing a significant amount of cost due to imperfect or false confidence. Now, just around the risk of kind of false confidence at speed and AI echo chambers, these are 4 different very reputable sources that break down some of this as well. So synthetic users, one of the most fascinating topics within UX design, the ability to create fake people that can then test our solutions. Now, yes, this is as dangerous as it sounds. Nielsen Norman suggests that synthetic users often miss the complexity of real behavior and should be used to generate hypotheses, not to make final decisions. So we can still use it to help us kind of lead in one direction or another, but we absolutely must validate. Human plus AI does not automatically mean better decisions. So this is from Nature Human Behavior. They analyzed 106 different experiments and found that human AI combinations often perform worse than best human or AI alone, especially on decision tasks. So this is basically suggesting that decision making should still be left to the person. We should not rely on AI only to produce our decisions. AI confidence can reduce human scrutiny. So Microsoft found that higher confidence in generative AI was associated with less critical thinking. I'm sure we've all felt that a little bit, becoming a bit of a prompt engineer, and what happens, where is that critical thinking coming through the process? And that's something that we at CTI think really heavily about throughout the design process, that we are maintaining a really critical eye, that we are thinking creatively about those solutions. And then automation cannot fully replace accessibility judgment. So WebAIM, which is one of the more famous accessibility organizations in the world, found that only 17% of accessibility practitioners believe automated tools can detect 50% or more accessibility issues. So basically, people don't have a lot of faith currently in AI being able to identify any accessibility issues beyond the automated. Now, within accessibility, we have automated testing and manual testing. We won't get fully into that, but essentially, we need to make sure that we are maintaining a good eye on accessibility from a manual perspective, making sure that a human is always involved in that process, because we're designing for humans. So just what does this mean for CTI in the UX team? I'm not going to go through all of these, but these are the different modes, for example, that we can run within our own LLM, and also how we then manage the AI bias. So we try to keep an eye on that. We will be sharing this slideshow later so that everyone, has the recording and will be able to review this in their own time. So I will move on from this now, but we obviously do have processes in place if we use AI, that we are always obviously validating that. And I should mention, we do offer to all of our clients that they choose not to use AI services. If they would prefer to use bespoke human service, we can absolutely do that, and we facilitate that on a regular basis. But if our clients are happy to leverage AI as a cost reducer or a value increaser, we absolutely do encourage that, and we have the process in place to handle that. So the future is already here in a lot of different ways. There are plenty of other organizations and businesses that are looking at this. For example, Trello, they're demoing interactive prototypes as communication tools to aid designer developer handoff. So how do we go from the design phase and actually hand the developers something that feels functional, and the developers can get a really good sense of exactly what they need to code? And then GitHub is building a general purpose accessibility agent. So this agent is focused on reading through code within websites, identifying where maybe we have some programmatic accessibility issues or other things like that, and then suggesting fixes. So all of these things, we can see the industry moving in this direction to more of an AI-assisted focus. So how does a busy CTI design team align compassion and commercials? This is one of the most important things I wanted to walk through. So we are saving cost, we're increasing speed, and we're scaling the right solutions. So let's look at a commercial impact of a smaller size project. Now, I do want this to be reviewed as a best case, highly automated thought experiment, and this is by no means an indication of the actual project size, cost, or value. Every client's project is different, and we, of course, adjust our estimations based on that client project, those client requirements. This is more of just a thought experiment for us to walk through. So if we look at the tender analysis and pre-sales, so this is what it might take us to do a medium-sized process within the tender analysis and the pre-sales process. I'm not going to go through every single line item, but we can see in the second column that we have the manual time that it would take the designer to do that if they were to do that all by hand, and then the automated time for the designer to do that with the assistance of AI in specific scenarios. Of course, we don't always use AI in these scenarios, but if it can help us speed something up here and there, we of course want to leverage that if we can. We can see the total amount of time here from 28 hours or 3.7 days to actually produce a tender and send it back and produce a response. We've reduced that to 1.2 days. So that's significant time saving. If we look at the project discovery and research phase, so this would be once we've signed that contract with the client, we're ready to start the work, and we're doing the discovery, we're doing the research. This is what that process looks like. So if we're doing things like onboarding client materials, we're looking at a project or research strategy, we're performing some desk research, performing user research, but this is only data crunching. I want to be very clear on that. Only crunching the data or outputs from the user testing, not performing the user testing. The AI shouldn't and cannot do that. And then task execution. So what tasks are we delivering? And then the prospect call data analysis. So this is the actual data analysis of the calls that we have with our client. So we can see the manual time versus the automated time. We're going from 75 hours or 10 days down to essentially 5 days. We're cutting that time in half if we use these automated services. I shouldn't say automated if we're using AI assistive services. Now, the last phase is the design phase. So if we're actually designing some work, if we're designing components or web pages, we're looking at new design components, maybe some legacy component tweaks, page assembly, content population, mobile responsive formatting, brand application, design prototyping, and accessibility design. All of those things take a lot of manual effort and time for our designers to perform because we do a lot of pixel pushing, and we're making sure that everything is picture perfect and the brand is picture perfect and the content is picture perfect. And a lot of that time could be spent speeding the process up so we can get it in front of the client, get it in front of users, get feedback, and then just polish it off at the end and make sure that it's perfect at the end. And we can see how much time we're able to save in the process here. That's 60.5 hours or 6.5 days versus 21.25 or 2.25 days. So a significant time save. Now, I want to explain what that actually means from a commercial perspective, right? How many hours were claimed? Well, throughout that project size, we're looking at something like 94.25 hours reclaimed. Significant time saving. The efficiency gain is something like 57.5%. So we're actually increasing the speed of that project by, what would the actual calculation be? By 100%. So we're increasing speed by 100% by increasing efficiency. And then the output multiplier. So how much output are we able to produce manually versus with automated assistance or with AI assistance? We're actually able to increase by 2.36 times output. And what does the cost saving look like? So if we assume that a senior designer is paid a salary of, let's say, £50,000, if we cost save per rollout, so per project, we're looking at around £2,500 per project that we're actually saving in cost if we were to cut that number of hours out of a project. Now, obviously, with the increase in efficiency, the reduction in total number of hours, what does this actually mean for our clients? What's the benefit to the client? How does the client see that value? Well, we can reinvest the cost saving for that project, adding more value in. So if the client had an original budget of 10 days for that project and we're able to do it in 5, we can add some more to the project and we can actually push it further. We can also deliver more value within lower budget projects. So this is allowing us now, it's enabling us to take on projects that were perhaps out of the wheelhouse before because they were just too low in terms of the budget. We're now able to help those clients out, which is very exciting for us. We're able to increase opportunities for collaboration. A lot of that menial time spent historically, we can now reinvest in the relationship. We can reinvest in understanding, reinvest in interviews and stakeholder reviews and user analysis as well. And lastly, spend less time on AI viable tasks like documentation and more time getting to know the user, which is where the true value lies. It's how we continue to drive value into the process, and it's how we continue to grow the user experience. So I would argue in the end, it seems that love can actually equal money. Now, obviously, at the end here, I just want to offer something to all of our participants. If you would like to be involved, we can offer free lightweight value-led UX health checks. This is something that we'd run through our own LLMs, and then we're able to leverage that and do a nice quality assurance check throughout that with our own designers. We will look at your website, the designers, the people. We will look through the website, make sure those factors align, and make sure that the outputs are really, really nice, and we'll end up sending that along to you.